Hello and welcome to Left, Right, Center. I'm Sean Boyd. We begin with the fallout from a security breach at the Secretary of State's office. Secretary Jena Griswold learned last week that passwords to voting systems in 63 of the state's 64 counties had been posted online for months. But she didn't tell anyone, not even county clerks or Governor Polis, who is now calling for an outside investigation after learning about the breach from a news report. The governor marshaled a small army of cybersecurity experts to ensure the election is secure.
How could this happen? Sensitive passwords posted.
Governor Polis is asking the same question many Coloradans are after someone at the Secretary of State's office posted the passwords to voting equipment in 63 of the state's 64 counties on a public website, where they remained for months. Secretary Jena Griswold learned of the breach last week, but didn't notify county clerks who are in charge of securing election equipment. They found out from the Colorado Republican Party.
Anything related to elections, we want to be radically transparent. So anytime we know something, we will tell people. I found out Wednesday myself. And
how did you find out?
I found out when the news reports were coming. I think we got a heads up that there was going to be a news report, and then I saw the news.
The governor says he's provided cybersecurity experts with security clearance to update all the passwords and make sure no one has accessed the equipment, including the scanners that tabulate votes.
This is why we have multiple tiers of safeguards, okay? If you just had one, and this was the only safeguard, the election could have been compromised. Thankfully, there are three. There needs another password, and there's physical presence in a badged, video-filmed area required.
What bothers me the most is the cover-up.
Representative Lisa Frizzell, chair of the State Audit Committee, is asking for an audit of the Secretary of State's election division, saying this isn't the first error. As CBS Colorado reported in 2020, the office sent voter registration postcards to non-citizens, then did it again in 2022.
What policies exist? What policies have not been observed? What procedures are already established but are being ignored? Because it is not normal for some of this stuff to be happening over and over and over again.
While an audit takes time, Senator Kevin Van Winkle says the committee should immediately bring in Griswold to answer questions.
The goal is to reassure the people of Colorado that we have asked the questions, we now have answers to the questions, and they know that their ballots will count.
Meanwhile, the governor is calling for an independent investigation.
Was it nefarious? Who did this? I read in one article that the person was, quote, no longer there. What does that mean? Were they fired? Were they reprimanded? Was there a crime committed? I know none of this. We should find this out.
Joining me, our political analyst, Republican Dick Wadhams and Democrat Mike Dino. I'm tired. So, Dick, Friday morning, Governor and Secretary Griswold said passwords have been updated and the equipment is secure. But an attorney for former President Donald Trump is now demanding that in counties where the passwords were current, and we don't know how many of those counties, had current passwords that were released, all the machines, it says, must be recertified, retested, and all of the ballots then recounted. Or reprocessed, I guess. Right. Matt Crane with the County Clerks Association says there simply isn't time to do that before next Tuesday. How big of an issue do you see this becoming?
Well, this is one time I think I might come down on the side of the Trump campaign. Now, I respect Matt Crane and what he does and his clerks, but I got to tell you, there are a lot of questions still looming about this, Sean, and her incompetence is breathtaking. I mean, Lisa Frizzell was right. I mean, it's the cover-up. There needs to be an outside investigation like there was on Tina Peters, who is now in prison for doing something similar. Now, I'm not saying this was a jailable act by Griswold, but we don't know that yet. And I think we need the Denver DA and the Attorney General and, frankly, the FBI to come in here and really ferret out what happened.
Yeah, and the governor certainly, I think, is going to make sure that there is some sort of independent investigation here. Mike, the Secretary of State's office says an employee accidentally posted these online. Now, again, governor said he doesn't know if that's true or not. Regardless of whether it's true, don't you think an audit is in order here, especially since, I mean, these were out there for months, and the secretary knew about it for almost a week and didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, I think an audit is at least the very least you do. I mean, this is a blunder in a very politically charged time that, you know, it's hard to overlook and just say, hey, you know, we sorted it out. I mean, the Secretary of State, a person I do like, you know, I think the challenge she has is she jumps on things quickly when it's to her advantage. And in this one, she stayed quiet about it. That doesn't look good. And, you know, I think she's tried to answer the questions about what went wrong, but I think other people have to take a really good look at it.
It is a bit surprising that she has not done any press conference. You know, I mean,
No,
she's done some interviews.
She's done interviews, but
she
you know,
declined to do an interview with me, I will say, but she has done a couple interviews, but
what's
no
different
press
from
conference.
last week when we had the ballots in Grand Junction, boy, she couldn't get on there quick enough.
And I would say, Sean, the interview she did do, she was not very good. I mean, she bobbed and weaved and wouldn't answer the questions. I mean,
Raised a lot more questions,
yes,
I think.
she did.
So interesting, Dick. It was the Colorado Republican Party that exposed this, actually.
Well, they're doing something.
Yeah.
Gee, that's great.
Okay. In fact, it is unclear if Secretary Griswold ever intended to tell anyone about this. Still, I can't help but wonder how the GOP knew about this and when it found out about this. Any insight?
Yeah, like I have an inside track with those guys. No, I have no idea. I assume this, if there was some Republican activist or something that stumbled across this, who was very computer savvy, and then shared it with the state party. And frankly, it was a good hit, and it's something the party should have done. But it took 18 months under Dave Williams for them to finally do something other than beat up on other Republicans and train their sights on a Democrat for once. So good for them. 18 months later.
They're calling for her to resign.
Which I think is appropriate as well. I think Governor Polis should appoint a new Secretary of State, and that's just this is inexcusable.
So, Mike, there was, you know, just a week ago, I guess, there was, and probably still, talk about Secretary Griswold potentially running for governor in 2026 when Polis' term is up. I don't know, how does it impact her political future?
Yeah.
Is it still something possible?
Very good question. I mean, her name has been mentioned, not just last week, but over the last year. I mean, she seems to be the only woman looking at running for the race in the Democratic side. And this makes it hard. And after we get past November 5th and start moving into the next election cycle, this is going to hang heavy in terms of how people view her as a viable candidate.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out from here. I think that's going to determine a lot of this, right?
No.
No?
I think several things, as you reported on, that have happened, you know, up to this, are hard to overcome.
Well, while more than 40% of Coloradans have already turned in their ballots, many of you are likely still working your way through the plethora of ballot questions. I've given many of them a reality check, and you can check those out in our special voters guide, half-hour special this Sunday at 4 p.m., or you can see them on cbscolorado.com. Up next, how what Denver voters decide could have a regional impact. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. Well, we've tackled several of the statewide questions here on Left, Right, Center. This week, we turn to some big Denver measures, including one that has a regional impact. 2Q would increase the sales tax in Denver by 3.4 cents on a $10 purchase to raise $70 million a year for Denver Health. Here's what you need to know. Denver Health is the primary safety net hospital in Colorado, caring for everyone regardless of whether they can pay. CEO Donna Lynn says uncompensated care has more than doubled in the last 5 years and will cost the hospital $155 million this year alone. She says while city funding has not changed over the last 20 years, the patient load has also doubled. Denver Health saw 87,000 mental health patients last year alone. So, Dick, you know, critics blame Denver Health's woes on migrants, but the hospital says last year it had 1.3 million patient visits, and less than 2% were migrants. So this is clearly much bigger than the migrant issue. Denver Health operates, I didn't know this, 29 community and school-based clinics.
Wow.
You know, cares for like 16,000 kids at no cost each year. I just got to wonder if voters get how much Denver Health does, especially as costs go up and reimbursement comes down. What do you think?
That story needs to be told, because I agree. I'm not sure people do know that. Denver Health is a real jewel, not only for Denver, but for the entire state. I've known a lot of people who have been taken to Denver Health from all over the state over the years, and it's an outstanding institution. And so I don't know if this is going to solve their problem, even if 2Q passes, but it needs help, because it is a real asset to the state.
Mike, critics have also said the hospital should really look at a regional tax, but a hospital spokesperson told me, you know, they've pulled a regional tax and it won't pass. And they also say, you know, look, we've had CEO after CEO over the years go to these surrounding cities and say, hey, come on, you know, pitch in here, and they won't. But the CEO, Donna Lynn, says if this doesn't pass, there's going to be job cuts and there's going to be program cuts. And I really, in this case, don't doubt that. Do you think voters will risk that in hopes of getting that regional cooperation here, that regional help?
Well, I don't think Denver voters are looking at it that way. I think they look at Denver Health, as Dick described it, very favorably. I mean, there's doctors that say, hey, if I'm in, I have to go to an emergency room for something, I want to go to Denver Health. Yeah. And so they're well renowned. I feel they're in a good place for this to pass. Now, I'm going to go back to ancient history. When Federico Pena was mayor, they looked at a plan regionally, and they might have traded some water to get the region to look into regional health care. And it was a good idea. It didn't go anywhere. I'd like to see a regional tax similar to the SCFD that funds arts. And I'd like it to also be for homelessness, too. So, you know, those are some things we can wish for. But I think Denver Health can right now take care of itself. And I think they're in a good spot to do that.
Mike is going to run for mayor, and Dick is going to be his campaign manager.
I would be honored to run his campaign.
So I want to ask you both this one, to weigh in on this. You know, Denver is also asking, we've talked about this before, a sales tax increase of 5 cents on a $10 purchase to raise, I think it's $100 million for affordable housing.
Yearly.
Right. That's on top of $75 million it'll spend this year on affordable housing. And if Denverites have to pick between these two tax measures, where do you see them coming down, Mike?
Well, anecdotally, I've talked to, you know, voters in Denver, and, you know, they are leaning toward Denver Health if they have to make a choice. I mean, they like the mayor's ballot measure for affordable housing. Some are saying we need just a little more information, and I know the mayor's attuned to that. And he's putting a lot of effort into it. But I think if voters make a choice, Denver Health might come out on top.
Interesting. What do you think, Dick?
I think that I was very effusive about Denver Health. I am the exact opposite on this housing thing. And I got to tell you that I look at all these other big projects in Denver, the 16th Street Mall, the DIA.
Colfax, bus rapid
Colfax, yes. And then I look at this pile of money and I'm thinking, this will be I'm afraid it's going to be another Denver boondoggle. And it's just too much money that can be abused, and I just think it's the wrong thing to do right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Animal rights advocates are behind two other big ballot measures in Denver. Ordinance 308 would ban fur products from being sold in the city, while Ordinance 309 would ban slaughterhouses in Denver. There is only one slaughterhouse right now, Superior Farms, that employs 160 people and provides lamb to local restaurants and grocery stores. So, Mike, let's talk about the fur ban first. Voters, you know, might think this is aimed at, you know, wealthy people walking around in their fur coats.
The old Pat Bolin on the sidelines.
I'm just going like, I haven't even seen this. Like, what is this, 1950s or something?
Exactly.
Right? I think my grandma might have had a fur coat. But the real impact is going to be on, like, the cowboys who have those hats made out of beaver pelts, right? You know, so
or felt.
Right, felt. The National Western Stock Show, vendors there, right? Or the Denver powwow.
Exactly.
Right? So still, there are a lot of animal lovers
Yeah.
in Denver, so where do you see them
Well,
voting on
as we
this?
talked about, I mean, there's signs all over my neighborhood, vote, yes
Yeah.
for the animals.
Right.
And they got, these foxes, which, can get darn mean themselves on there, but.
How do you know?
Well, they go after the rabbits.
All right.
So, it's just nature. But I do think, they put out a mailer recently with a woman who sells cowboy hats, and that personalized it. I wanted them to get their own animal, like a llama or something. I thought that would help. But, I'm thinking too much. And but I think that, it's going to be a dicey one for people because animals do tug at the heart.
Right. I think it's those who read up on this, I think, might vote against it, but the others who just take it on its face might vote for it.
Well, and it's a long ballot, and to get down to the end of that one, I don't know.
No kidding. So, Dick, the slaughterhouse ban.
Yeah.
This one has received quite a bit of attention,
Right.
and I think the big question here is what does it solve?
Nothing.
Won't the lambs just get shipped somewhere else to be killed?
They will, and it will increase the cost of lamb here in Denver and here in Colorado. It will put 160 employees out of work who own the company.
Right.
It's employee owned. They're largely Hispanic, and what I've read, these employees really love working there. They love the conditions, and they love the company that they own. And then on top of it, Sean, it's just another attack on rural Colorado. I mean, you've got ranchers and farmers across the state who raise these lambs, and if they don't have this slaughterhouse, they'll have to send them to Texas or other states. And I just
And then ship the meat back here.
and ship the meat back here. I mean, this is the ultimate goal of the group behind this is to ban meat, period, nationally. And this is like the first step. They've kind of admitted that. And it's just another assault on rural Colorado. We talk about it almost every week.
I know, we do talk about it a lot. Okay, before we go, predictions for next Tuesday. Who wants to go first?
Dick should go.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah.
Are we
What is it,
talking?
beauty before age or age before beauty? I don't know.
Are we talking about the 2nd Congressional District in Iowa? Is that what we're talking
Right.
about? No, I'm sorry. Well, first of all, I think Gabe Evans will defeat Congresswoman Caraveo, and I think that Jeff Hurd will get a victory in the 3rd. The presidential race. I know you're waiting for my.
We are.
I actually think that Harris will probably eke out victories in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and she'll win that vote in Nebraska, and she'll have a 270 to 268 win for president. I do. If she loses any one of those states, Trump will be elected president because I think he's going to win the others. And so if she loses one of those the blue wall, she loses, and Trump wins.
Mike?
I'll play off Dick. I mean, I think on the congressional races, some good news for Caraveo, seeing a little bit of edge in the polling, and I think she's run a good campaign, and I do expect her to win. And then certainly in the 3rd, we saw the Cook report that tracks this nationally take it from likely Republican to leaning. So, I mean, I do think that maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We saw a Keating poll, a state pollster, predict a 12-point victory or show a 12-point margin in a poll for Harris. And Dick has talked about, in Colorado, excuse me. And Dick has talked about, if she has a bigger turnout and a larger margin of victory, I do think that will help the 2 congressional races, and particularly the 8th. On the presidential, I think Harris wins big or barely loses. So I'm going to give you a range there. Yeah.
Okay, that's playing it safe for sure. Well, don't forget to vote. We'll see you next week after the election for Left, Right, Center. And we will see you here on election night, all night. All right.